If you are in a membership, actively in a mainline denomination, you've seen a falling away in the last 10, 20 years. You've seen a falling away. And I believe that's the day we live. I think that's here. That's a sign. The Bible says, time we think not, the Lord will come. Now, that's verse 5. I'll go to 6. And then in verse 6 he says, ye shall hear of wars, rumors of wars, see that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. And so these things begin to happen. Well, he's talking about the deception. Then you add with this wars, rumors of wars. Lindsay did it for me, and I could probably find it somewhere. Didn't have it put up tonight, but there's about 40 maybe. Oh, there's conflict going all over Africa. There's some trouble down in South America. There's some countries on the verge. Honduras is on the verge of a revolution. They kicked the dictator out, the guy they elected, and you got boiling points all over. Needless to say, the Middle East. I mean, needless to say. And World War I seemingly kind of kicked this thing in gear, and then since in World War II, and then, you know, life has become so cheap. But just in the area of wars and rumors of wars. And he makes this statement following that. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Now, who's the authority? Who are we listening to here? These are the words of Jesus. And then he goes on to point out in verse 7, and here famines, pestilence, earthquakes. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in divers places. It's various places. Now, I'd planned to do video tonight, and I'll do it next week. How many, and some of you have been in the class, I know you are, but the mega disaster series they do on the History Channel, how many have seen those? Okay. It woke me up. I guess I preached through the tribulation, a part of it, when I saw it. But Revelation, you open the book and you begin to see all these natural disasters that are predicted in the book of Revelation. And it was a Saturday morning, the History Channel was on, I was doing some study, and then I heard them talking about there would be a certain, and it was Yellowstone, I believe, National Park. And I didn't realize Yellowstone was the biggest. There's several super volcanoes in the world. I think there are 10. And 2 or 3 are in the United States. I know Yellowstone is one of them. And they said the crater was 32 miles across. And they said if it erupted, that there would be a catastrophic loss of life. And they got to adding up numbers. And they put a few of these together and said 1/3 of the world's population would die. And I said, that's Revelation. And so I got the series and got to watching them, and there's some things predicted. I mean, one, if you familiar with Canary Islands. All of you familiar with Canary Islands? Anybody not familiar with Canary Island? There's a volcano there. Last erupted in 48. They've had an earthquake, but there's a fault there. And the thing is 10 miles, it's as big as Manhattan. About 10 miles across and a mile or so high. And it's volcanic rock, and it's already shifted like 15 feet. Got a picture of a man standing in it. And the scientists, not the preacher, but the scientists said, when there's another earthquake, or if the volcano is active, that the whole face of that mountain is going to slide off into the Atlantic. Initially, there's going to be a tsunami 1,500 feet high that's going to race towards Africa, Europe, the U.S., North and South America. And then they interviewed the guy down in Florida who is the state emergency guy. And he said, yeah. And when it gets to Florida, it's going to swamp the whole southern tip of Florida, go from the Atlantic to the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, yeah. It's going to travel speed of sound, they said. Oh, I've forgotten how high it's going to be gets here, but I think it goes 30, 40 miles inland. Hey, I tell you what, it'll be enough that if it happens, go back to sleep. Just go back to sleep. Don't even worry about it. If you're going to do anything at all, just start singing Near My God to Thee. Because there's no way in the world we ever get out of Myrtle Beach. I mean, you couldn't get out. I mean, it'd just be a thing. But the scientists are saying, not if, when. And then they did another one. St. Louis, Missouri. New Madrid, outside of St. Louis. We had somebody in the class who lived there at one time. But anyway, back in 1811, they had an earthquake. Lasted 9 months. And it was so severe the Mississippi River flowed backwards. Rang church bells in New England. Knocked a steeple off a church in Charleston, South Carolina, because we're on the same fault. And they said, when this thing goes off, not if, when. They said it's on a 100-year cycle. We're overdue. They had a little woman over near Charleston, Dorchester County, just a few days ago, and, it could be. So here's the point. Either through the volcanoes, like Yellowstone, and 5 states are just going to be covered. They're going to block out the sun. It's going to do all kind of stuff. It's going to be major. You got one in St. Helens in Alaska, Washington, state of Washington. You got New Madrid for an earthquake. You got the Canary Islands for a tsunami. And plus all the other stuff that's out there that all the time talking about San Francisco or California with the earthquakes there. The other day in Oklahoma, they had so many earthquakes, not major, but they call them clusters were going off, and also in Nevada. So just from a natural perspective, just natural, I can see Revelation being fulfilled in a minute. You just in a minute, and that's what the Bible talks about. Mountains disappearing.
Maybe 2 minutes.
Well, maybe 2. But my point is, people, when the Bible tells us, for nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in divers places, when the Bible tells us this, we ought to listen. But then you got the scientists saying, not if, when. We can see how it's going to happen. That doesn't count asteroids. And they're taking these asteroids so seriously now. They had a thing on TV the other day. They're going to try to send a space deal up there and move it, try to move the asteroid out of the way. So I believe everything you read in the book of Revelation is going to happen.